Hi, I'm Judi Friedman, and I'm chairperson of an organization called PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy, and I mean squeaky clean energy. And this show is about health. It's also about money, because lots of people are interested in health and lots of people are interested in money. And I have two wonderful guests with us today. One is Chris Phelps of Environment Connecticut, and the other is John Humphries of the Connecticut Roundtable on Climate and Jobs. They know a lot about what's going on in our wonderful state, and they're going to tell us some very important facts. So Chris, what does Environment Connecticut do, and why are you involved in it?
Sure. Well, I'm the state director of Environment Connecticut, and we are a nonprofit, member-supported environmental advocacy organization in Connecticut. We've been around for quite a long time, working on clean air, clean water, protecting our landscapes.
Health issues.
Exactly. And in recent years, doing a lot of work on clean energy, global warming, climate change issues.
Climate change. Is there climate changing?
Yes, actually, I think I've noticed a few changes.
What is specifically, when you talk about climate change, is there something that comes to mind about Connecticut that we would see right away, that we might think of right away?
Sure. Well, probably a couple of related things. In fact, we just released a report recently called Dangerous Inheritance. It looks
Dangerous Inheritance.
Yep.
That's a good title.
It is. It talks about the climate changes we've seen over the course of the last generation, and looking forward to what we are likely to see over the course of the next 10, 20 years. So for an example, just in Connecticut, the average temperature in the state has risen 2.5 degrees over the course of a given calendar year.
Of course, a lot of people say, oh, that's great. I like warm weather.
Yep.
What's the problem?
Well, that's just the change we've seen since the 1970s, and the rate of change is increasing. So looking forward another 20, 30 years, we're talking 2.5 degrees and more on top of that. And just one example of the types of things that has done to change our state is that we're seeing, and in fact, we were at an event last night where Commissioner Rob Klee of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection touched on this. We're seeing a change in the fisheries in Long Island Sound.
A change in the fisheries
Yep.
in Long Island Sound. What changes do we see?
Well, in a nutshell, the kind of fish that we're seeing in Long Island Sound, lobsters and other fish.
Yum, yum. I love lobster.
Yep. Well, today, we're not seeing many lobsters. And in fact, the fishery in Long Island Sound, the kind of fish that are in Long Island Sound today, look a lot more like what we used to see 20 years ago, say, in the mid-Atlantic region around Maryland.
So we're seeing fish in Long Island Sound that we would maybe see in the Maryland area.
Yeah, exactly.
Very different.
And so we're looking at a future, a very near future, even now, where things like the lobster fishery in this part of New England are gone and are going away.
So we might not be able to have lobster. That would bother a lot of people. We all like lobster.
And those are the kinds of real effects, on both the small scale and large scale that we're beginning to experience.
But some people would say, well, so what? We can't have lobster, so what's the problem? I mean, so I'll eat Maine lobsters.
Right. Well, what's happening is we're seeing that habitat shifting further northwards. So if you extrapolate out another few decades, the types of changes we're seeing in that fishery in Long Island Sound and off this part of the New England coast, you'll begin to see farther north of New England, in Massachusetts, and all the way up to Maine. And that's
so we may see the warmer waters go north.
Yeah, and that's a big part of what climate change is doing in the here and now. It's changing our agricultural systems.
How is it changing our agricultural systems?
Well, we're seeing the trees in our forests that are in our forests today are different from the trees that were in our forests a generation ago.
And is that bad?
Well, the sugar maple, for example, is the habitat for the climate for the sugar maple is shifting farther northwards. So the maple sugar industry in New England is shifting further and further northwards. So two of my
favorite things,
exactly.
Lobsters and maple syrup. Yeah. That's pretty...
Yeah, we're looking at a long-term trend where basically living in Connecticut, whether you're talking about the climate, the temperature, the types of agriculture we have, is looking more and more like states further south from us.
And is there, there's a concern about rising water levels also. Is that That's an issue?
That's a huge issue, and that's a huge economic issue for this state.
Why is that a huge economic issue?
Well, we have seen, as the sea level has risen, we've seen, particularly on the eastern seaboard, a faster rate of sea level rise for a lot of reasons related to global warming. What that does is that exacerbates the flooding events that happen with just normal high tides, but also then when we have severe storms. Hurricane Sandy, Tropical Storm Irene, for example. And that has resulted in a really dramatic increase in the value and the cost of the property damage that we're seeing in shoreline communities. Mm-hmm. I ask anyone who lives on the shoreline in Connecticut, who lived through Sandy, who lived through Irene, back to back, the economic effect of those storms and the flooding and the damage they're causing is a huge burden on the state. And the bad news is, that's just the beginning.
That's just the beginning. John, so glad you joined us. What exactly is the Connecticut Roundtable on Climate and Jobs? And can you add to what Chris is saying about the effect of climate disruption?
Sure. Thanks, Judy. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
The Connecticut Roundtable on Climate and Jobs is a partnership between the InterReligious EcoJustice Network.
Okay, let me just stop for a minute. I just want to say, put in a special plug for a very, very wonderful organization. And would you say the name again, because
Sure.
it's long?
It's the InterReligious EcoJustice Network that goes by the melodious acronym IREJN, and also then the Connecticut AFLCIO.
So you're combining jobs, labor, and religion.
Right.
In this and other things, obviously.
And so the purpose of the roundtable is to bring together religious, labor, and environmental folks, constituencies that haven't always agreed on environmental issues, together to advocate for public policies that both protect the climate and create good jobs here in Connecticut.
Now, what from an energy point of view would help create more jobs in Connecticut?
Well, there's a variety of things that, from a climate protection standpoint, that are much more job intensive than, for example, fossil fuel jobs.
Right.
And so solar installation, energy efficiency.
So you need more people to make those things work than you would for...
And they're also local jobs.
Local jobs.
So that if you're looking at large power plants and bringing electricity in through big power lines, those jobs often are far away from here in Connecticut. Whereas if you're looking at fuel cell and solar installations and combined heat and power, distributed generation, those are all local jobs that put people to work here.
Okay, so this is where money and health combine too, because jobs mean money, and we're very interested in Connecticut jobs. If we get power from Hydro-Quebec, our money is going north, not to Connecticut. But if we have solar installations in Connecticut, then we have jobs here, and that's
Right.
very exciting.
Right.
So I love the idea of these different groups working together. It's
And that's
beautiful.
really the focus of the roundtable is to serve as a network and a coalition, bringing together groups that, for whom their first and primary focus is not the environment. So religious folks, labor folks, and other groups that care and are more increasingly caring about the environment and climate change issues. But that's not their primary concern. We create the space for them to come together, connect with environmental organizations, and find common ground to work on.
Wonderful. We do have many friends who belong to various churches, and the churches are putting solar panels and
right.
saving a lot of money. And that's where money comes into this program too, because using these renewable fuels and energy efficiency saves money. And in fact, you can even earn money by being smart about energy. So there's money and health involved, and it's very exciting work you're doing. And I really want to commend both of you. Also, I want to commend the viewers for watching this program, because there are soaps and heavy metal bands or whatever you want to watch, but this is pretty serious business, but it does affect each of us and our health and our children's health. And sounds funny, but even our pets' health, even our, the house, the air in our home, how we heat our home, how we light it, affects all of our health, and it's very exciting work that you do. One thing I'm very interested in also in our organization is the issue of democracy. And on that subject, there's a wonderful idea that I wondered if you could explain, and that's the idea of shared solar. So can you tell us a little, Chris, about shared solar and what's all that all about?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty simple concept, and it flows out of the reality that for a lot of homeowners in particular, and a lot of businesses, particularly small businesses, solar, they can't put solar on their roof because it's shaded by a tree or it faces north, and it doesn't work for them. And so for those families and businesses, they don't really have the ability to take direct advantage of installing solar power for their home or business. What shared solar and shared clean energy policies do, and these started in places like Colorado, Minnesota, Massachusetts that are already doing
Minnesota?
this. Minnesota?
Minnesota is a freezing cold place, and shared solar is big there?
Yeah, and what they do is it allows you to build a large solar array, and in essence, if you and John and I can each buy shares of its generation.
So the solar array could be on a field.
Exactly.
It could be on a parking lot. It could be on a Home Depot.
Exactly. It could be on top of an old, closed, and capped landfill. In fact, that's one of the types of places that is perfect to put something like a big solar array. And then each person and each family or business or church that's bought a share of the generation from that solar array gets that generation, that credit, directly on their electric bill every month, just as if they had those solar panels installed on their roof. It's a really neat way to aggregate customers together to build even more solar power and as you said, democratize access to clean energy. It's also a really great way, but really the only way for renters to take advantage of solar power. And that's a really big
Yeah, it isn't really fair because like, for instance, renters have to pay a fixed charge on their bill, and they can't take advantage of something like this. John, what do you feel about shared solar, and where are we going in this state? How far have we come? What is shared solar in Connecticut in relation to other states in the country?
Well, I think part of the answer and part of the reason that the labor unions are concerned about climate change is that the impacts are disproportionately felt by low-income and working families. Right. And workers are directly impacted when significant storm events happen. And in terms of shared solar, it is a way for lower-income folks who can't afford to put solar panels on their roof to actually, as Chris said, buy a share in a community solar installation and access clean energy in ways that they wouldn't have.
This is just beautiful. This is democracy, this is health, and this is money, really. Saving money, earning money even. It's just a beautiful combination.
And one of the neat parts of that is if you're that renter, for example, buying a share of the clean energy system, the solar output, what it does is it allows you to lock in a fixed price for your electricity.
You can lock in a fixed price. So if the price of electricity goes up.
Yep. It's a way to keep people's electric rates from going up along with the rates from the power plants, for example. So it's a way to help people take advantage of solar power, participate in the clean energy economy in a way that puts money back in their pockets. So
do we have shared solar in Connecticut?
Not yet. Not yet. There's actually, as we speak here in April, there's legislation in Hartford to allow shared solar to happen in Connecticut, to kind of join with the states around us that have already moved forward. Like Massachusetts is our closest neighbor that's done that. There's legislation in Hartford. Hopefully it will pass this year. There's a lot of support for it from labor, from environmental groups, from a lot of folks around the state, but to be honest, the folks who are most opposed to it are the electric utilities.
The electric utility, they supply our electricity, and they're opposed to this healthy, money-saving, democratic idea?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going through a disruptive period in the way our electric system works in Connecticut and around the country. And
in what way is it disruptive?
well, the utilities are the old model, if you will, is
built to what, in the 1900s?
Yep, that has been around for, well, since the dawn of the electric age, if you will. Has been a model of large central station, as they call them, power plants that would generate electricity and then transmit long distances that electricity to our homes and our businesses.
And they make their money according to the more kilowatt hours that they sell,
Yep.
the greater their profits. And so that's the old model. And the transition now is, how do we move them away from that and be able to benefit from selling less energy by encouraging energy efficiency and transition to renewables.
Well, that brings us to another problem too. With this old model, our grid is very vulnerable to hackers, to storms, and if we had a less centralized grid,
Yep.
we might be a lot safer. Because just think what would happen if a hacker, and this has happened, I mean, Stuxnet was used and brought down the centrifuges in Iran. It is possible that hackers could bring down our electric system, and we need to guard against that, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure, absolutely. Or even more, we've seen that similar type of disruption already, not necessarily from hackers, but we lived through it in Connecticut after Hurricane Sandy, after Storm Irene, when so many people across Connecticut were out of power for days and over a week.
So what can we do? How can we move this idea of good health, saving money, shared solar, democracy, and grid stability? How can we move these ideas forward? Join organizations, contact legislators? What do you feel we should do?
Well, I think that it's really building broader coalitions, building connections among diverse constituencies that haven't necessarily worked together or cared about some of these issues, and finding pocketbook issues and ways for them to connect into and so, for example, the Roundtable on Climate and Jobs right now during this legislative session is working with Acadia Center and on a bill that would cap the fixed electric charge on our monthly distribution bill at $10 an hour. I'm sorry, $10 a month, and that
it's bad enough.
It's bad enough, but so $10 a month after it was raised this past fall, and we have found people all across the state from all kinds of different organizations that are very concerned about this. And it's a bipartisan support for this bill that would be one step toward changing the model, changing the way that the utilities function. And they have been, over the last decade, steadily increasing the monthly fixed charge, and partly as a response to declining revenues because of solar power.
Well, they're saying right. we have to do the wires and we have to do the transformers, so we owe that money, you owe that money to us. But I think what is not being considered here is the value of solar, because I think that we haven't given enough value to solar as a source of energy. In the summer, when we need more and more energy and they bring on very expensive polluting plants, that's when solar really kicks in. So I think this is a very important point also.
And the value of solar also is that it can reduce the what's called the peaking demand, and therefore can reduce the amount of new infrastructure that needs to be installed for the major power grid. And again, solar is more local jobs for local Connecticut folks.
Okay, so we want. What should people do? What can they do? Join these organizations. Is that what would you suggest? What other things would you suggest? Put solar, if they can, on their houses or businesses?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think that's definitely one of the things. One of the pieces of legislation working forward this year is a initiative from the governor's office to expand residential solar in Connecticut tenfold over the next few years. That's a huge opportunity for families throughout the state to put solar on their homes. And getting involved with organizations like the Roundtable on Jobs and Climate is important too. And then whether it's talking about capping the fixed charge for customers or moving forward issues like shared solar, contacting legislators is the number one thing people need to do. Pick up the phone.
Lots of people don't know who their state legislator is, who they are. They know their federal legislators, but not their state ones. And I think that's something that we can all do, is to get to know our state legislature. Even when the legislature isn't in session, contact them and tell them your ideas, because I think that's a weakness in the system sometimes.
And even if there aren't if you don't know specific legislation to support, but to let them know that you care about these issues and that you're concerned about supporting bills that will advance clean energy and local jobs from clean energy and distributed generation.
And by clean energy, we mean also energy efficiency. That is really the win-win of all time. Just saving energy, using energy efficient appliances and devices is just an incredible win-win. To me, that's where the revolution, the heart of the energy revolution.
That's the cheapest source of energy.
Yeah, and everybody can do that. Just changing light bulbs to the new LED light bulbs, your bill, boom, goes down. What a beautiful thing.
And even more is insulation in your walls.
Insulation in your walls and in your ceilings and wherever you can. That's right. You've done those things, right?
Oh yeah. We had a home energy solutions audit of our house a number of years ago.
Okay, an audit, yay! Everyone should get an audit, and it's great.
That helped our family reduce the energy costs in our home dramatically. Just doing that and doing the simple things that it highlighted. And even me, I know this stuff, and I found things that I didn't know about my house when I went through that process.
Wonderful, and I can't thank you two enough for coming to the program, speaking out, and working so hard. It's just wonderful, wonderful work. And I want to thank the viewers that are watching this program. I hope you've learned something. I hope you consider joining PACE. The Acadia Center is a wonderful organization, InterReligious EcoJustice. I'm saying it correctly. And of course, Environment Connecticut and the Roundtable. So do act. It's very, very important, and we thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it, because Nutmeg is doing a great job educating the public in our wonderful part of Connecticut. We're so happy that Nutmeg is here. You guys just do a great job.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Judi.
you. You're very welcome. And keep it up. Don't stop. Eat your vitamins.
We will.
Good.
Okay, well, we just enjoyed having you, and we hope that we can make a difference and let people know what the problems are and solutions. And thanks for talking about solutions, because there is something each of us can do.
Absolutely.
So thank you.